Hello and welcome once again to episode 48 of Code Completion. We are a group of iOS developers and educators hoping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing our code. My name is Dimitri and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
So before we get started, let's jump into our IndieAppSpotlight. So today we are checking out DocView by Jarasim Sergi, a Mac app that upgrades your window management capabilities through your dock. So DocView stays out of your way until you move your mouse to your dock, where it will preview all the open windows you have for the app that you are currently highlighting with your mouse. From there, DocView gives you powerful window management utilities to do all your standard operations, close, minimize, zoom, but you also get tiling modes to position windows just how you'd want them. So DocView costs only $19.99 for the current version or $49.99 for a lifetime license. So please be sure to support Jarasim by checking it out. And if you are an indie developer, we want to hear from you. Please reach out to us on Twitter at CodeCompletion via DM so we can spotlight your app too. So as we record today, it is iPhone Day, the day that iPhones ship out en masse and probably overwhelm all logistics worldwide for a limited amount of time. So we figure we'd do our best to review what we've just received in the mail. So what phone did you order, Spencer?
Yeah, so I got the 13 Pro in, what is it called now? Sierra Blue?
Sierra Blue, aka Space Gray.
Yeah, oh my gosh. Starlight. And I received it probably just over 2 hours ago, and so it literally finished transferring from everything from my old phone to this one 25 minutes ago, and so I quickly, pulled out the camera, checked out the 3x zoom, which looks great. Haven't tried the cinematic mode yet, but I think the biggest thing that I noticed immediately is that ProMotion display, which is just buttery smooth. It's very interesting as soon as you go from anything that is 60 hertz, which to your eye is smooth, and then you go to anything else, it is just like butter. It's insane how much that double the frame rate or refresh rate of the screen is to the human eye. Everything just looks very, very smooth, and so I'm really excited to have that as kind of one of the main features.
So I was a dummy a few hours ago. I'm like, anyone on our private Slack, I'm like, anyone feel like their iPhone 13 is like way smoother than their 12? I thought just like pure speed wise. I didn't even realize that the ProMotion display was at work. And I'm like, it just feels so janky on my iPhone 12. And I didn't even realize until Spencer says, whoa, that ProMotion display is amazing. So you really have to see it to realize like what you're missing out on. But it immediately renders everything else just like stuttery, right? That's the best way to explain it. I mean, you have half the frames all of a sudden, and our eyes notice that, and we are immediately ruined by it, as with most things.
No, it's so true. I mean, you can just sit there and, swipe between pages in the home screen of your apps, and it's just immediately clear how smooth everything is, or scroll up and down a table view or something. Like Dimitri said, it really is kind of like an experience that you have to see to understand how much smoother it is. It's really cool. So if you have the opportunity to go use one in an Apple store when they open up or everything, I'd just recommend it just to kind of see what we're talking about a little bit more.
Yeah, there are ways to get smooth mouse movements on your computer as well, and that's to turn on mouse trails. You remember good old mouse trails? You get all those interpolations of mouse pointers, and it's just so smooth.
I love that when I was a kid on
especially shaking around the mouse.
Yeah, like on our family's Windows Vista computer. Man, I thought I was so cool having the mouse trails on.
But it really is a big upgrade, and I will be surprised if we don't start seeing this soon on Macs, because iPads with larger screens have had this for quite a while now. Macs are running on the same platform as their iOS devices, so there's really no reason why Apple couldn't do this on the displays that are built in, and immediately ruin every external display you ever plug into your Mac. Because Macs do support high refresh rate displays if you have a graphics card that's capable of it and a display that can do something with it. So it is a supported configuration. It's just interesting that nowadays on the displays that Apple ships, it's not something that is possible yet.
Right. I think a big thing is, if you ever watch any iPhone reviews, like probably the one that I'll watch every year is like the Marques Brownlee review of the new iPhones and everything. And, a lot of those reviewers are both kind of on the Apple and Android side of things. And, every year, probably for the last 2 or 3 years, they're like, where's the high refresh, display? I don't think it's quite that simple to get something that looks so good, that has the great brightness that the iPhone does and everything. I'm no display engineer, so maybe it is, I don't know. But I agree that now that it's here and many more people will experience this high refresh rate, I think one thing is, I don't know how useful it would be in a desktop sense, especially because Apple's not really pushing like high, gaming at all, let alone like high refresh rate gaming, with powerful graphics. Maybe that'll improve with the M2 or whatever it is, but
not to mention just having Slack open just slideshows your Mac anyways. So
yeah, there's nothing that
60.
really there's nothing that really warrants 120 or even 90 hertz, I'd say, which is unfortunate. I wish it was, because it is a great experience just to have your MacBook out of the box. That would be great to just have a nice high refresh rate display. I don't know how much of a priority it would be, as opposed to something like the mini LED display or something like that. That's just maybe something that people would appreciate more.
Well, I think it goes hand in hand with things like Retina and wide color gamut. Like most people don't need these things, and they don't. It doesn't add anything to their experience, and it's not something that they readily notice unless you point it out either. But it does make for a nicer experience. Like having wide color gamut displays means that your photos will now pop more when there's the color information there to like warrant it, especially if you're taking pictures with your iPhone, which will go ahead and provide this information readily. So like that's a benefit. Retina displays, like, sure, you can, like most people, they probably make things bigger on their computers than smaller to be able to see those crisp lines, and they don't really notice. But it does, again, make things nicer. And even if it's just that little thing where you're seeing the mouse just be much smoother, that's easier for your eye to track, like, in all honesty. Like when the mouse has to jump hundreds of pixels to just move, that's when you lose track of it very easily. And that's not even with the slider cranked all the way. That's just if you move it quickly from one side of the screen to the other, you can lose it. But if you do get those intermediate frames, it makes it a lot easier to track. And like, it's those little tiny things that do make for a better experience. Just like I was saying, just the animation of opening and closing an app, like, that is not something that we necessarily need as iPhone users, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
But that's what made me notice that everything felt so much faster. It made the device feel faster. And maybe that's why they're not bringing it to the Mac, because any application can kind of bring down system performance to the point where, like, you start noticing the display frame rate like dipping below 60 on the regular, which is something that's very foreign on iOS, and that's strictly because you can have multiple windows and multiple things all running and competing for resources all at once on a Mac. So like, that is a possibility that's not on iOS, and therefore maybe we wouldn't be able to take advantage of that ProMotion display just for basic animations as much as we want to, because Slack being in the background would just prevent the system from being able to do that, for instance.
Yeah. I just looked, and the Pro Display XDR only supports, you probably know this, you have one. It only supports 60 hertz. And less.
Yeah.
I think it supports a few different things for like cinematic, like 24 or 30 or something. But
23975, all the
yeah, right. Yes, all of those weird. But you know, even Apple's $5,000, $6,000 display doesn't support that either. So I don't think.
I mean,
it's
it wouldn't be
really...
able to. Like, strictly speaking, 6K
Right.
at 60 hertz is a lot of data. 6K at double that is even more data. If you look at gaming monitors, they're not Retina, they're not wide color gamut, they're barely HDR sometimes, but they focus on high frame rate because you have to trade everything else for that. And like the graphics cards, they will run at a lower resolution to give you the higher frame rate. Many times out of most. So like it's all a system of trade-offs, which is unfortunate at the moment. But I guess eventually we'll get to the point where we'll just have like very fast computers that can keep up with all these different sorts of situations, and be able to perform well no matter what.
Yeah, agreed. So you've had your phone for hours longer than I have. So what else have you noticed about the new phone?
So I noticed that the Sierra Blue is very gray. It reminds me of graphite. Yeah. If you go to system preferences on your Mac and you change the color mode to graphite, I don't know if you can still do that with the accent colors and all. But it feels like a very muted blue.
Yes.
To the point where it looks more gray than blue. And since it's a color that is not gold, which I feel like is the gaudiest of colors, despite me loving orange, like I put an orange case on my phone, gold is essentially orange, but the fact that shiny makes it gaudy immediately, I don't know, like psychology.
I think it's more yellow too.
Yeah. But like the new iMac, that yellow is gorgeous, but it doesn't look gold.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
orange is gorgeous.
You're
It
right.
doesn't look gold. Does that make sense? Like there's that uncanny valley, and right in the middle of those two, where it's like I like golden things, and it's like not the image that you want to get from.
That's awesome.
So I think it's good that we have colors. I wish Apple would think that Pro devices can deserve more colors. I was very, very hopeful with like the iMac generation with all those different colors that, here we have on the front of the iMacs the non-Pro models, and on the back of the iMacs we're going to have the Pro colors, because they basically took those colors from their devices, and they built out that color selection. So I was like, great, Apple kind of like finally stabilized on something, and we're going to start to see that more and more, and unfortunately we don't. So that's why I picked the Sierra Blue over the Starlight, the Midnight, and the Gold. I think those are the options. No, I think for the Pro it's silver, space gray. Do they still use silver?
No, I think it's Starlight now. I think they replaced silver with that Starlight, if I remember right.
Well, in any case, it was the only color option that was not gold, so I went for it. To me, like immediately upon taking this out of the box, I immediately noticed a size difference because I got so used to using a mini for like so long. And I am still feeling that size difference. So, fun fact, while I was moving everything over, I noticed that my work eSIM, that was my phone had dual SIMs on it. The work eSIM did not transfer over because AT&T apparently prevents this now, even though it worked fine last time I did this transition last year. So whatever, it didn't work. And therefore it's stuck on my iPhone mini, which is a very convenient way of making sure I can still use the iPhone mini on the daily, and still end up carrying it around. So now I have two phones on me, one massive and one tiny, and I have two pockets, thankfully, and I can pick one or the other. I was kind of hoping the magnets would kind of attach so that way the big phone can have a little backpack of a tiny phone, kind of like a parent awesome. Holding their toddler. I thought that would be a very good idea to kind of see if it would work, but the magnets are not strong enough, unfortunately, through the cases, so that was not a possibility.
That's awesome. So I went from the 12 Pro to the 13 Pro, and it is heavier. Not to mention, they're thicker because they have the larger batteries. And I actually prefer this slightly thicker phone. It just feels a little bit more sure in my hands. I don't know how to explain it. It's just like
it's dense.
A little bit. Yeah, it's dense and it feels like I can hold on to it better. So I'm actually a fan of the slightly thicker phone itself. I like the blue. I was just sitting here comparing it with the Pacific Blue iPhone 12 that I have right here, and
which is darker, right?
It's much darker, yeah. So it's a fair amount darker, but I think I kind of like the Pacific Blue more, but I'm definitely not opposed to the Sierra Blue. And like you mentioned, I was also surprised that they didn't have at least one more color, new color to the iPhone. And I'm wondering if they're kind of gauging between these blues how many of the blue phones that people buy, because what I found interesting was probably because the Pro phones have all of these features like ProRes and everything that we kind of care about. Both you, I, and Ben at least bought the blue iPhone, the Sierra Blue, which I was very surprised when Ben said that, just because he's so on the red phone train. But
after red is any color.
Right, yeah. No, and that's the thing, right? I think people just want colors. We've been with either black, silver, or space gray or gold iPhones for the entire life of iPhones, so it's fun to see new colors, and I hope that they're kind of just gauging the waters here, and I think probably a lot of people are buying these colored Pro level phones. So hopefully next 2 years, they've got more colors.
Yeah, Apple, if you want to sell more of the Pro models than the non-Pro model, just all the colors on the Pro models. Instantly, people will choose that over anything else.
It'd be really funny if they did that and just put gray and silver on the non-Pro iPhones and then only colors on the Pro.
Because yes, you can get a case, but the color of the metal just looks nice. And it's fun to have something that is your favorite color. I mean, that's why people have favorite colors, right? We're so insistent on getting something that we like. I mean, Bose makes completely customizable. You can pick each and every different hue for all the different pieces. I have a nice little library of swatches. Takes a little longer, sure, but it's fun, and people like that, So yeah, Apple, if you're listening, which you're not, go ahead and please offer colors. And the iMac colors are awesome. Use those. If you had a bright yellow, that matched the iMac as a Pro phone, I would totally have picked that. Just because it's a gorgeous color. And if you had the whole collection of different colors, that would be even better, right?
Yeah, agreed.
That said, again, coming from the Mini, I was lying down earlier, and I immediately felt the weight of this absolute unit of a phone, and it is quite heavy. And I think people said it was heavier than the previous model. So since you have both in front of you, is it noticeable between the two, or is it just me going from the Mini to the gigantic version of the not even the gigantest version?
Yes, it is noticeable. I don't really know how to describe the amount of, perceived weight that it is, but yes, I definitely am oh shoot, this is a little bit heavier. I think, of course, you'll get used to it. Might take a little bit longer for you coming from the Mini, but yes, they are heavier just in general.
I don't think I'm going to get used to it either, because I'm going to be carrying both around with me. It's going to be a constant reminder, which is probably bad. Because if next year there are no Mini phones, then I have nothing to go back to, which is going to be a tragedy.
Yeah, you should just kind of go cold turkey and switch your eSIM over. Hopefully, if they can do it somehow. They're just not able to do it at all, or it's just not in the that initial transfer process that they can't do it?
So it didn't do it automatically. When I went to follow the settings, it basically complained that AT&T prohibits this for whatever reason. So I probably just need to give a call to my work and have HR send me a new little eSIM card. It's like a card with a QR code on it. I guess they can email it to me.
I was going to say, wait, hold on. eSIM card?
Exactly. So, yeah, it's just, I think, going to just be a bit of a headache to get my work to send me a new card or email me a new card and just re-onboard the number as an eSIM.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So moving on to the cameras. The cameras coming from a Mini are amazing. I gave the Telephoto 3X a shot, and I'm like, I don't have to get up anymore to take pictures of cats, because that's all I take pictures of.
And your garden outside.
And my garden outside. I have a nice collection of individual frames on a daily basis of all my plants growing. So one day, when I have time, which I will never have, I will go ahead and put that into a time lapse, and you can watch plants grow. Nice. Or I can watch plants grow, because I don't think anyone else cares. So on that note, I am excited to try out the camera tomorrow morning when I get to take more pictures of my plants and realize that the framing is all wrong, because I got used to taking it with the iPhone Mini.
Right.
But the telephoto is definitely welcome after missing it for so long. I know people complain, oh, it's not a better camera, yada yada, not enough low light. I don't really care much because I have like Siri connected to the lights. I can always turn on the lights easily to get more light. So for me, it's definitely just the zoom. And if in the future we can welcome like more pixels at the same time, then we can get even better pictures, I think. Because most of the time we have light, and for the times we don't, we have lenses that do better in those situations, and that's perfectly fine with me, I think.
Yeah. I think every year it's always a welcome improvement to have better glass, even if it's a little bit, but I think we're down to like f1.7 or something right now. It's pretty impressive how wide they can get these small lenses to be. I'm really excited to try out, again, I haven't really tried out the cameras much except for just in a couple places in my house, but the 3x zoom I think is great because 2x it's good, but it's also not a huge difference where, you know, if you want to zoom on something, it's, I don't know, for me, I always would want to, or just wish that I could push in more without going into digital zoom. So the 3x zoom is, I think, going to be really nice for that.
And not to mention, it was the Max last year of the iPhone 12, right? That had the 2.5x zoom, correct?
Oh, I don't know.
Like
I was thinking
a little bit of an odd like jump. They were saying it's a 5 times optical system, and now it's a 6 times optical system because we have the 3x.
Right. I was thinking about the sensor shift, which that was also a part of the Max only for the wide lens, and that's now trickled down, I think, even to the 12, if I'm not mistaken.
The 13, the regular 13,
or the 13. Sorry, yes, the non-Pro 13. So that's really cool. I think that'll be nice, both for low light, but also just in general. You know, more stabilization, the better. Yeah. And as soon as I opened up the camera, it's like, do you want to try out a style? And I was like, nah, I'm good. So I need to do that.
Thing.
Did you?
Yeah, and I don't know where to find it anymore.
Yeah.
So I will need to dig into that as well to give that a better try.
Yeah, definitely.
I
But
feel
exciting stuff with that, with
Yeah.
cameras overall.
Yeah, I feel like I'm just going to stick with the default look because I'm boring that way and I like defaults. So yeah, that's probably where I'm going to stay. A really cool addition is the macro
Yes.
possibilities that are enabled by the really short focal point of the ultra wide camera. So if you're not in the ultra wide mode and you just put your phone really close to something, the phone will automatically switch to the ultra wide camera, and it does shift the perspective a little bit. And it kind of stays at that mode from that point forward. So if you were to switch to the 3x, it's not actually going to switch to the 3x lens. It's staying on the 0.5x lens because you are like so close to something, but it will zoom everything in, which like turns your phone into an instant little microscope. Like not big enough to see cells and stuff, but plenty large enough to go ahead and see details and smears of oil that you didn't think were there. All of a sudden like super obvious. So I am very excited about the macro lens, mostly because I love taking pictures of textures, and it's something that is now going to be possible when it wasn't before. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
Agreed. Yeah, all of these. I'm a big fan of multiple cameras on the phone. It's just a fun way to have and perhaps introduce all of these different photographic techniques and styles to other people that maybe haven't done it before. But when I was in school, I took photography class every year, and I loved doing like macro photography. Is super fun. Even things like one of the ones that I just remember the most off the top of my head is like taking a picture of the top of a soda can, and you can see all of these little micro abrasions, and it's just all of this stuff that is there, but you just can't see it well enough. So having a little bit of that on the phone is exciting. I haven't tried it yet, but it's what a 2 centimeter distance away is kind
just
of the max.
about. Yeah, so
That's
about
pretty
as
close.
close as you're gonna get your phone. Like it's not an actual microscope. It won't be like under a millimeter from your sample, and you're not gonna be able to see that. But in terms of like comfortably getting your phone close to something, it will focus now, where previously it wouldn't. And this works very well, and it's very automatic. So there's no sort of macro what's that called when there's no sort of macro mode in the camera app, which
right.
Like they already added another mode called this cinematic mode for the video to that carousel that is infuriating, if you ask me. The infuriating carousel of the Photos app. They did not add another mode to that, which I'm thankful for. You just go ahead and pull out your camera and point it close to something, and it instantly grabs focus, which is very, very nice. And you can get some pretty interesting pictures, even if you're just taking a picture to get a closer look at something, which oftentimes is a very useful like use of a phone. Then it's a win, I think.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So going back to the cinematic mode, that's one thing that I'm interested to know if they'll make API available for that, either or both, for being able to do that in your own apps for something like Filmic Pro, for example, and also getting access to that data to be able to kind of like edit the depth and everything, like you guys talked about last week, where it's really just kind of done in software and you could adjust that. I'm wondering if there's going to be some sort of API available for either or both of those kind of pieces of cinematic mode itself. I haven't seen anything, but I also haven't really looked for it either.
I think this is going to be possible because both iMovie on the iPad and or iOS and Final Cut Pro are apparently getting the ability to edit those that depth information as a post process.
Okay.
And from what I've read, it's a sidecar file, meaning it's a extra file that's named the same but with a different extension. And that file is probably like the same atom structure as all the other QuickTime files that exist, and it probably just includes frame-by-frame depth information at that point. So whether there's a high-level API to redo the focus, or whether it's something that you need to compute on your own, I think the data should be easily accessible. I don't think it's in some sort of arcane format that is going to be impossible to get to.
Gotcha. Cool. That's exciting. I know, just like you mentioned, the I don't really know what the carousel, I think is what you called it, in the Photos app, the camera app, is a little bit frustrating. So I generally, when I'm trying to like take more than just a quick video, I'll go into something like Filmic where there's a little bit more control, and hopefully that, you know, they can have all of these same features, because the camera app's better than it was, but it's still, you know, pretty bare bones in terms of a lot of things like focus control, ISO control, that kind of stuff. So be cool to have this as well.
Yep, definitely. And I think that concludes the cool things about the camera. Anything else?
The only thing, other thing that I've noticed is I have this little wireless charging stand that my phone sits on all the time when I'm at my desk. Yeah. So let me pull it out here for you.
Oh, so, mine is just barely on there.
So this is the 12 Pro, and it just barely fits without messing up the camera bump. And here is the 13 Pro, so I'm going to have to find a new thing, because it kind of either clips on the lens itself and then it's all askew over here. So that's a little bit of a bummer, where it just doesn't sit straight, or it's not really contacting the phone and charging well. So that's a little bit of a bummer, but I guess it's a good trade-off to have better cameras. Definitely.
I think Ben was saying on Twitter, he's not here in this episode, so we gotta use what he says without his consent. So he was saying, I think it was him on Twitter, that in a Tesla, it no longer like sits where the wireless charging area on the Tesla is, and it catches right where the camera is, which causes the phone to now slide around like crazy. So yay. But that leads me into something I did want to bring up. There's a very good I think I brought this up on last week's episode, but there's a very good reason why the iPhone mini does not have the Pro cameras, because it would clip right into the charging coil.
Yeah.
And Apple's not going to lower the charging coil without lowering the Apple logo, because then it wouldn't be centered. So that's going to be an interesting problem to solve if they care about smaller devices, which I'm going to go ahead and say they probably don't care that much, because they've never really run the experiment of having like the best of everything at every size and actually seeing what people are going to pick. They just made a very small but vastly inferior at this stage phone with the camera system that doesn't live up to the camera system that comes on the Pros, and that's just a tad unfortunate, I think, because I feel like at a certain point there was benefit to having things miniaturized in technology. Like, people were actively chasing that, and it was more expensive to have something that was smaller. It's like, oh, the next thing is smaller and it's more expensive. Like, that was a given. But as technology kind of became consumerized, I would be likely to say, where it's not just tech enthusiasts or professionals that are buying this as equipment anymore. It's purely like, hey, I need a phone, I'm going to go buy whatever the latest thing is. I think that has kind of pushed that mentality out, which is it's a shame, I think. But I can speak at length about that.
Yeah. I think for me, it's a little mind-boggling that people will buy the max size phone unless you just have massive, large, like long fingers. I don't know how you do it, because the Pro size, or the 12 size, or 13, wow, the normal size iPhone is at my absolute max for the size of phone that I am comfortable using, and even then I have to do some weird hand gymnastics just to reach the top of the phone sometimes to hit a back button, for example.
So remember when there was not a big iPhone? Like, all the iPhones kind of came in like one size.
Yeah.
And there were a ton of large Android devices, like mega large by those standards.
Oh, yeah.
I had a lot of friends who preferred those devices, and they were not the type of people to ever use their phone one-handed. They always had one phone with the hand and another phone with a prodding finger to go ahead and use it. And as soon as you do that, sure, like it doesn't matter how big the device. In fact, bigger is better. You have a bigger screen. Many of these people had purses to put their phones in, or gigantic pockets to put them in. So the size was never a concern for most people, and it was only a benefit because it had more, like, in that sense of the word.
Sure.
And it's only those of us, I think, that got used to the idea of using a phone one-handed that ever saw the downside to that. Because for us to use a phone, it's in one hand. Like, we're doing something with our other hand.
Right.
Our one hand is dexterous enough to manipulate everything on the screen, and then all of a sudden you make the screen bigger and we can't reach. So then it's like super awkward. We now change how we're holding the phone. You're like using the bottom of your pinky to get the bottom. It's like precariously balanced in your in the cradle that you create in your hand, just so you can reach stuff. And I think we're also the same type of people who drop the phone on our face while like sleeping, because we're used to balancing it with gravity working this way, and gravity working in the other way just goes straight onto your face, breaks your nose in the process with this the increased weights that these phones have.
Yeah, I expect a report of that, of how many times you've done that next week.
The iPad is the worst. I have not had an iPad accident in quite a while because of the what's it called? The Magic Dock, the Magic Keyboard. Is that the name of it? The one with really strong magnets. So the iPad ain't going out nowhere on that dock. So I like liberally use the keyboard to kind of prop the iPad on top of my head in bed because it's like a comfortable place to be. And like I have not had the iPad follow me, but I remember what it feels like to have an iPad follow me. That is like enough to be terrified of it. And I got deja vus of that when I was in bed earlier, just playing with my phone, and having to like hold it in one hand, like this is not working. Grab the other hand to hold on to it as well.
Yeah.
So
I think, like you said, it kind of defeats the purpose when you have to use two hands, or you're doing the finger stylus.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, it doesn't matter what size it is. It might as well be an iPad. And that's fine. Like, to me, it feels like this is nearly the size of my 11-inch iPad. Like, compared to the size that I was comfortable holding in my hand, like, yeah, I can hold an iPad like this too. It barely fits, but it works, and I feel like the Max is right there at that size as well.
Yeah. Is the Mini about the size of like an iPhone 5 or like the original SE?
It's bigger.
It's bigger. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I would probably then get the Mini. I was gonna say I really liked the size of the 5 and SE, so if it's around that size, if they had it in Pro, I'd probably get that.
Yeah, and I encourage everyone, if you've never held a Mini before, go to an Apple store and try it out for like 2 seconds. It is going to ruin you because it is, unfortunately, the ideal size for like a regular-handed person. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, yes, some people have giant hands. They will probably be fine with the Mini. Some people have tiny hands. They will find the Mini too big. But they're going to be better with the Mini than with the bigger one. I guess maybe at that point, like, just go as big as possible because your hands are too small to use it one-handed anyways. Like, personally, I think I've said this before, the iPhone 4 size, if that was full screen, that would be a great size. In fact, there was a reason Apple made the first phones that size. Like, they could have made the phone bigger, have more battery in it. That was an option to them, but they settled on that size. Probably because the screens were only available in that size, but also because that's a good size for something that sits in your hand and goes in your pocket and needs to move around with you. It really does fit well. And nowadays, like we use our phones for so much more, so it's understandable that we have more uses for it. Like, I totally get that. But I think there are others, and I'm not alone in thinking that there are people that want a smaller phone.
The iPhone Nano.
The iPhone Nano. I will take an Apple. Make an iPhone Mini Pro, a Pro Mini, right? It's Pro Max, so it'd be Pro Mini, right?
Yeah.
So make a Pro Mini, and then on the regular line, make an iPhone Nano. iPhone 13,
and we
iPhone
start
15
the cycle
Nano.
over again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, there's a reason why people wanted smaller and smaller iPods, because you can stuff them away and use them, and it's good to have smaller things sometimes. And
yeah.
Some people will pay more for it. Some won't. That's just the reality of it. But like, I'm sure the people who love your products the most are going to not care about the price as much. Like, they might not buy devices as often, but they will get the device they really want, no matter what the price it is. So maybe it's just a gut feeling. I'm not as successful as Apple, so take everything with a grain of salt. And also, like, you'll have to put your Apple logo further down. It won't work.
I haven't seen anything, but it was maybe a couple weeks ago that I saw reports of Apple already putting in like redesigns or patents or something for like a different MagSafe. Do you know anything about that?
Oh, I do not.
No. Which, it would be interesting if they were thinking about somehow reworking it to be in a different place, or maybe it's just stronger magnets or something like that. I'm not sure.
I mean, they could use a smaller coil, right? The watch uses a smaller coil. It seems like the new phones have a mystery data transmission at 60 gigahertz or something that does not exist anywhere else, and that you can't actually use. Or was it the watches that have?
It was the watches, the Series 6, yeah.
Okay, so I guess we'll find out if it's also in the iPhone. I mean, there's teardowns right now, likely. So we'll find out soon if it's also in the iPhone. And maybe that's Apple's solution to not having ports, is just to have a very fast wireless system that a puck can connect to, and then you have a cable that does not connect via a port. It connects via a puck. And that's that.
That'd be really interesting.
I mean, if anything, Apple could just put contacts on the back, just like they do on the iPad, and then that can be a way of charging it, like, without a port. It's just, here are some contacts. But, yeah. I don't do hardware. I soldered something over the weekend, and I found out the LED display component was, like, busted, and I failed at unsoldering it. So that's the extent of my hardware prowess. So I don't actually know how to fit all these things inside a phone, but Apple, figure it out, please.
Well, it's interesting. It's interesting that you mentioned going just straight to that, because I saw on Twitter, I think this morning or maybe yesterday, that there was a ruling that Apple in like a couple years needs to implement USB-C ports in their phones. It was like a EU ruling or something.
Yeah, so for
maybe
Europe,
they'll just say, sorry, nope, we'll just do portless. See how that goes down over there. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people have mentioned it. I think it's a bit short-sighted of Europe as a whole to mandate this, mostly because they were ready to like double down behind micro USB, which is the worst port in existence.
Terrible.
And if they had, then we would not have USB-C all over everything. And USB-C is getting older, and we're eventually going to have something new after that. But if they decide this is the way, then we're not going to have anything better. So that's just an unfortunate side effect of this. So maybe we all go back to those DC jacks. Do you remember those that were popular in the
like the barrel plugs?
Yeah, barrel plugs, but of different sizes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
so you never know. And if you find two that are identical, don't plug them in. You don't know what voltage is coming in on that.
Imagine every size of iPhone having a different barrel plug.
Yeah, they brought back the headphone jack. It doubles as a barrel plug.
Oh, no. That would be terrible.
There's your fast charging.
No.
It works in 360 degrees. No more aiming. This week's episode of Code Completion is once again brought to you by Bon Voyage. Bon Voyage is a full-stack iOS application development course from Johnny B. With this course, you'll learn how to build both a full iOS client app and associated React web administration application. The app and the site will integrate with Firebase as well as Stripe and Plaid for payment processing. Bon Voyage is a place to book extravagant vacations, and you'll gain the skills to build the iOS app from the ground up and integrate everything you need to provide a world-class vacation booking experience. To find out more and sign up for the course, visit bonvoyage.app/course. That's bon-voyage.app/course, COURSE. And be sure to follow Bon Voyage's instructor, Johnny B. Codes, that's JONNYBCODES, on Twitter to stay up to date with all his courses. Thanks once again to Bon Voyage e-commerce app course for sponsoring code completion. So now that we've gone through our topic, it's time for Complete the Code, where we quiz our listeners on your knowledge of Swift, Apple, and all things development. Spencer?
Yep. So this week we still haven't had any submissions yet, and Dimitri didn't provide me with a solution either. So let's go over the prompt once again. If you're listening to the podcast, you can check the podcast art, the show notes to follow along. So the prompt is, since Swift's async await syntax is making its way to Xcode 13, how would you transform the code below, which schedules an outward call, lets us know the request is sent, and prints when the response is received, to use this new async await pattern?
So can you complete the code? Tweet your answers to us with hashtag CompleteTheCode, all one word. The first to get it right will get a shout out on next week's episode, or I will actually write out a solution to give to Spencer so he can read it out next week. I figured I will keep kicking the barrel, kicking the can down the road, because we have an episode scheduled to talk about the new stuff in Swift 5.5, which includes async await. So maybe that will be next week. Maybe it will be pushed one more week later if we don't get any responses. So we'll find out. So yeah, as always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Please be sure to follow us on Twitter at Code Completion to know when new episodes get released, and feel free to tweet at us if there's a topic you'd like for us to dig into. Most importantly, as a small podcast, please be sure to share this with all your friends and family who are also interested in any part of the process of app development. It's your support that enables us to continue doing this, and we hope to grow a healthy community around everything we discuss. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who's at Spencer C. Curtis, that's SpencerCurtis, on Twitter, for joining me this week. My name once again is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buniol, that's DIMITRIBOUNIOL, and we'll see you all next week.
Bye.
So, since we're a little short on this episode, I figure we can talk a tiny bit about Nintendo Direct.
Yes, let's do it.
So, what are you most excited about, Spencer?
I am the most excited about the Nintendo 64 ports that they've got going. That's a part of their upgraded membership plan, which I think is fine. I would probably spend, I don't know how much they would price the games individually, but I'd buy quite a few of them, like Banjo-Kazooie, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask when it comes out. So I'd spend a fair amount of money just to have them on my Switch. So if they're a part of this subscription and I can keep them around and they don't sort of cycle through, then I'm happy about that. There wasn't really anything else that I was super stoked for. Most of the time I watch these Nintendo Directs to see who the next character in Smash will be, and they announced that they're having an announcement for that on the 5th of October. So gotta wait a little bit longer. Yes, classic announcement. So other than that, though, I wasn't expecting any Nintendo port or Nintendo 64 ports. I knew that they were rumored.
There were rumors right before it happened, but I think everyone was like, it's probably not going to happen. At this point, everyone's just hoping for it.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, is maybe a part of why, if you remember way back, I think it was around holiday season last year, there was the Super Mario All-Stars that has 3 Mario games. One of them is Super Mario 64, and now Mario 64 is a part of this new subscription thing. So I wonder if they were gauging interest with that or something. I don't know. It's kind of interesting, but that initial, I think they've got 8 or 9 initial games with that, which is pretty exciting. And then they also are doing the same thing with some Sega Genesis games, but that was less a part of my childhood. we had a Sega Genesis, but I think the only games we had were Sonic 1, 2, and 3. So
I'm surprised that they included that. It feels like they were rivals back then. Like you either had one console or the other kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's surprising to see Nintendo including both. I'm gonna guess that the Nintendo 64 stuff is going to require an extra, like, a few dollars on the subscription plan every month, mostly because it's it's software by companies that maybe still exist, whereas all the NES and SNES titles are probably all from companies that no longer exist, meaning they just had to get the basic rights to do what they wanted to do, and that was that. And that's probably the big difference. I'm also going to go ahead and guess that a lot of the titles were maybe not developed in Japan for the Nintendo 64 compared to the NES and SNES titles. And something that's interesting about Japanese licensing is it is more of like a lump sum that you just pay. So for Nintendo to say, I want to include Banjo-Kazooie, they would go to the Banjo-Kazooie developers that don't exist anymore. Actually, it's Microsoft. They would go to Microsoft and say, we will give you $10,000 and you'll let us make a Banjo-Kazooie movie. And Microsoft would be like, yeah, sure, go do that. You own the movie, we own the original art, and that's that, basically. And Microsoft would not see a penny from any of the sales of any of the proceeds for the movie, for instance. And I think that is basically how licensing works in Japan as a whole. So maybe they were able to do that more for the NES and SNES systems and that library that they included. And then for the Nintendo 64, maybe because those companies still exist, maybe because they are not Japanese, they had to go ahead and have royalty license agreements with those companies, which means that they need to collect extra money to be able to actually fulfill that in the long run.
Yeah, that makes sense. No doubt that it's going to cost more. That it's like they're calling it like Nintendo Switch Online plus expansion pass, I think is kind of like the term for it and everything.
I would guess like an extra $5-10 a year.
Yeah.
Like I can't imagine it being more. I mean, it's just $20 for the Nintendo Switch Online thing anyways, right?
And yeah, and honestly, this is like the selfish like Smash player in me, but I would pay so much more money if they would have better servers and like better connection, because I play Smash a lot and I always play online in the era of COVID, and the connection's pretty bad. It can get really, really laggy. So I naively hope that some of this extra money goes also, aside from like the licensing fees and royalties, to upping the better, having better servers. But I highly doubt that coming from Nintendo, but it would be really cool and appreciated.
You have to wait for the new 4K Nintendo Switch to come out for them to upgrade their servers at the same time for that system only. And then you'll have new servers for a small amount of time before everyone moves over to them.
Oh my gosh, dude. But and they have cool things like a bunch of different games. There's a couple there's like Metroid Dread, which I think is like the biggest one that people are excited
coming out in like
about.
2 weeks, right?
Yeah, something like that. There are actually quite a few titles that are coming out in October, which is really cool. I don't know if I'll get it. I don't know. I'm on the fence about it, but
don't worry. I pre-ordered it. I'll probably never touch it. And then
nice.
I will give you my review in 2 years when I eventually burn out from work and play video games for the first time in eons.
Yeah, that's how like my entire Switch collection is. We were talking about this in our Slack group, but they asked like what were my favorite games, and I had to seriously scroll through so many games. Like I'm not trying to say this to be a baller here, but like I bought a lot of games on the Switch and I have played that like very little. I spend my time between like Smash and Breath of the Wild right now, and that's basically it when I play my Switch. So not super excited about games. I don't know.
It's
fun.
It's a Smash machine, right?
Yeah, man, Smash is that's pretty much all I play right now. So actually, that's all I played for like last 2 years.
I think I'm really excited about Banjo-Kazooie more than anything, just because I love that game.
Banjo-Kazooie is
so
awesome.
Much.
Look, in the meantime, you can just play Smash because they have Banjo and Kazooie in there now.
True. Do you have to pay, like, you have to like
Yes.
unlock stuff in Smash, right? You don't have to pay for the characters. I haven't kept up with modern Smash.
You have to pay for like DLC characters, which Banjo-Kazooie are a part of.
So when you pay for them, do you still have to unlock them?
No, I think they get unlocked immediately.
Okay.
So you could do that, and
We'll see the next time I turn on my Switch.
yeah, dust it off. Oh, and then they're coming out with wireless Nintendo 64 and Sega Genesis controllers, so that's cool too.
Yeah, I'll definitely get that for nostalgia.
Yeah.
Need to have my hand blister right here.
I was just thinking like, oh, play that on the new Mario Party and get some hand blisters.
On that one Boo inflation minigame.
Yes.
I think
gosh,
that's a unique experience that's shared amongst all 90s kids.
Yeah, I even did that on like a GameCube controller. Like it's grippy, but it's still. I remember it just shredded the middle.
Yeah,
of
but
my
only kids are
palm.
stupid enough to do this.
Yeah, true. Gotta go fast, dude.
I know. It's like I don't know whose thumb is dexterous to do this.
Yeah. I don't know where it went, but I showed this to. I think I showed this to Dimitri the other week. There's this company, I think they're in Japan, that makes different adapters. So I bought a USB to, it's both Nintendo 64 and GameCube adapter, so you could in theory plug it into like your Switch or your computer as well if you wanted to emulate games. So I'm excited to like pull out my controllers and see if they work. And
that'd be neat.
I was gonna say like emulate Ocarina of Time, but now that it's coming to the Switch, I might just wait and do it on there. But yeah, it was super cool. I'll send you a link.
I wonder if it's gonna come with both the Ocarina of Time and Master Quest's variation of Ocarina of Time, because I remember the GameCube emulation of Ocarina of Time also came with the Master Quest variation of the game, which is just mixed up dungeons, and it's a welcome addition. And I hope that it also comes out here, and it would be a shame for it to kind of be lost to time in that regard, and not kind of brought forward.
It's fun when you've played the game before for a little more of a challenge.
Mm-hmm. And I guess this basically means that every Zelda game can be played on the Switch except Twilight Princess, right?
Yes.
Or almost every Zelda game.
Pretty much, yeah. They'll have Majora's Mask later. Yeah, and then it'll just be Twilight Princess. They've got Skyward Sword now. I don't know about like Zelda 2.
I think it's on the NES, right?
Oh, did they have that on the I haven't looked at like any of the NES games. That was
I think so.
Like cool. That's cool. I found it.
Oh, neat.
Ta-da.
Oh, those plugs are ginormous.
I know they are.
Especially the Nintendo 64 one.
Yeah. So I'll try that out. It was like $20. It wasn't too bad. So yeah. But I think a cool direct, and there were a ton of games. It's just
like Splatoon 3, I think, right?
Yeah, and a new Kirby game. Couple from Square Enix, so that's cool.
No Breath of the Wild 2 trailers.
Yeah.
It's okay. We'll get more and more of those as it is ready to launch.
Yeah, I hope that they do a good job on it. I'm happy to wait longer if it, turns out well like Breath of the Wild did. So.
Yeah. Well, this time at least they don't have to build the engine, right? They got the engine. Yeah. They just need to go ahead and build the game. So True. They've taken roughly about the same amount of time, I feel like.
Yeah, that's fair.
So maybe by the time it actually comes out, we'll have a Pro Switch that will not come in colors and will only it'll be thicker. It'll have a bigger something lump, and yeah, It'll be in 4K, 20 FPS.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that's the hope. I would even prefer if it's like 1080p or 1440p, but 60 FPS, like everything. Like Breath of the Wild's awesome, but it runs like 30 FPS max,
And it's not even at
stutters a fair
1080p.
amount.
It's at like 960 or something like that.
Yeah, so frame rate's good, like we talked about with the ProMotion. It's, you know, once you have a high refresh rate, it's hard to go back.
Yeah. More important than the resolution for most cases.
Yeah,